Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to another week of the Fixate Binge Podcast. I'm glad you're here. We're going to have a great episode for this podcast today. I think you're going to love my guest. He is such a talented and award-winning, Emmy award-winning filmmaker. So we're going to dive into that in just a minute here, and you're going to hear my interview with him regarding his new documentary. And if you're living in the Modesto area, the documentary is called The Last Picture Shows, and it's going to be showing at the Modesto State Theater on September 25th. So buy your tickets early. I think if you're living in the Central Valley area, as I do, I live 15, 20 minutes outside of Modesto, so I definitely will be buying my tickets to see it as it was intended, as I think Rustin intended, on the big screen. And it's kind of an appropriate space to watch it because the film is about theaters that are like state theaters or local theaters inside of a downtown of a lot of rural-based towns and I wouldn't say hamlets. That's more like an English village. But some of these far-flung places around the American West is where some of these theaters are. And I'm not saying that Modesto is a far-flung place at all, but there's been considerable community effort to keep the Modesto State Theater alive. It fights an uphill battle. So there are ways to get involved. Maybe you live in a small town where you're listening to this podcast today. You yourself live in a small town. If you love cinema and you live in a small town and your town has like one of those old time 1 or 2 screen cinemas, I'm going to bet you that they will accept any offer you give them to volunteer or to help do raffles for them or to help out with any budget saving schemes or anything to help them raise money to keep theater or the cinema rather alive. And I certainly grew up in a town that had that problem. You'll hear me talk about that with my interview with Rustin. And, there's just a lot going on. I think there's something to be said about preserving these tiny cinema screen houses around the country. And this documentary that Rustin has put together really hits the nail on the head. Before we jump into his interview, I just wanted to tell you a couple things I'm watching. I think I would be remiss if I didn't give you a recommendation of something I've watched recently. It's not necessarily new, but something I'm continuing to enjoy. And that is, that is Apple TV's Silo with Rebecca Ferguson in the starring role, and Common as kind of a morally gray character, and Tim Robbins as also kind of an evil morally gray character. We're several seasons in. I'm enjoying this current season. I believe next season, if I'm not mistaken, next season will be the 4th season. Yeah, I think it'll be the 4th season. They'll wrap it up after the next season. If my information is incorrect, let me know. Let me have it. Correct me, please. But it's a really great show. And again, I've raved about this before, but Apple really doesn't. They don't cut corners when it comes to budgets for their TV shows or Apple-produced films. They really have a committed production crew that will put together something that looks like it wasn't just some ramshackle, dilapidated budget, that borrowed from other things. They really want to give their audiences an immersive experience, and so they don't cut corners on the budget. I appreciate that, especially given how much money I pay Apple, the company, for my iPhones in my family. It's nice to get a little something back in terms of entertainment. So there is that. I don't want to waste any more time. I'm not saying that what I had to say would have wasted your time, but let's get right to the meat on the bone, what this podcast is about. My guest is Rustin Thompson. Like I said before, he is an award-winning documentarian. He has made 6 different documentaries. In 1997, and I'm going to refer to some notes I have here on the side, he won a national Emmy, which is big because there's local Emmys and things, but he won a national Emmy as the producer cameraman on the CBS News special Famine in North Korea. Along with writer-filmmaker Anne Hedreen, he won regional Emmys for his work in Seattle, which is where he's based, and he co-founded the White Noise Productions, producing more than 200 short films for nonprofits. So if you don't know who Rustin Thompson is, it's time, and you work in the independent film market and you're listening to this, it's time to put Rustin on your radar. He is a patron of the arts. He is a fantastic guest, as well, of course he is, as you're about to hear. He basically wrote 2 books. His first book is called Get Close, and I'll refer to it in my interview with him, Lean Team Documentary Filmmaking, which was published by the Oxford University Press. So that's a big deal. His debut novel, called Hard Times in Babylon, is available now on paperback and ebook from Amazon. And all of his documentaries, if you're interested in his documentary style and want to learn a little bit more about his methodology and his approach, all of his documentaries via a simple Google search are available on video on demand. So you can rent them or purchase them directly from there. I want to just give you the trailer to his documentary, The Last Picture Shows. It's a brief trailer. A lot of it is visual, so you're going to hear some music. If you're listening to this rather than watching it on my YouTube channel, there's a lot of visuals, but as is the case with the subject matter. But without further ado, here is the documentary for Rustin Thompson's The Last Picture Shows.
The challenges for small town theaters are many. We have places where sometimes 50 miles, there is no movie theater at all, what I would refer to as cinema deserts. If you don't create the movie-going experience for children and young adults, they don't develop that habit and they'll never pick it up. You can't miss what you don't know.
It's tough making a living in the movie industry now.
We've lost over $100,000 2 years in a row. This is our 3rd year where we're on that track.
Our greatest challenge today is how we're treated by the studios.
They determine when and how you get the film.
If I could book things the way I want to, I'd make 3 or 4 times as much money.
The film companies are cutting their own throats.
So how come you keep at it?
Because we enjoyed doing it and the community needs it. The community supported me, I support the community.
I grew up coming here as a little kid to this same drive-in. It's one of the few around.
This is our 62nd season.
I started working here in 1998 when I was 16.
My grandfather taught me how to be a projectionist when I was 13.
I actually had my first kiss in this theater.
In this fair land, I'll stay no more.
Movies are now just like data parts streaming in the air. When it's real, that's the payoff.
We're at a turning point where film could disappear.
The old motto of the movie house is that you are being treated like royalty, whether you are the mayor or farmer. The movie house was the pride of that town.
I'm going to the west.
Okay, I hope that's whetted your appetite. Like I said, if you're living in the Modesto area, you're going to be able to see this film at the Modesto State Theater. I urge you to get your tickets. I plan on being there. So if you're listening to this and you're living in the Modesto area, I'll see you there. I will see you there because I wouldn't miss it. Unfortunately, Rustin's not going to be able to make an appearance at this particular screening, but there's a good chance that there'll be some sort of discussion, a prior or post Q&A about the film. There's always a good chance of that at the Modesto State Theater. So stay tuned. I will definitely be talking a little bit more about this as we get closer to that September 25th date. Without further ado, I keep saying further ado, and then I give you further ado. But without further ado, let me introduce you to my guest and our interview on the Fixate Binge Podcast. And again, my guest is documentary filmmaker, award-winning documentary filmmaker, and author Rustin Thompson on the Fixate Binge Podcast. Okay, so I watched your film last night, and this morning I wrote my review, and I was almost in tears.
Oh, wow.
Because it brought up a memory of my late father and I. My father was a Korean War vet, bit on the older side. He passed away a couple years ago. And as I was watching your film, I remember one evening, my father told me and my 3 little brothers, he said, "Kids, we're going to the movies. We're going to the pictures." And we're like, "Well, okay." And we go to the pictures, and the only thing I knew is that it was a double feature, and the 2 films we were going to see were 2 films he loved. And one of them was High Noon, and the other one was Shane. And we're living in this small town, Hamilton, Montana, in the Bitterroot Valley. And the theater we went to go to was built in 1935. And I went to and that's the movie theater I saw E.T. as a kid. I just watching your film, this is a 45-year-old memory, and I had completely forgotten about that. And so I'm almost in tears remembering my memories with Dad and this wonderful experience going to the movies with him. And
in a small town like Hamilton, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, this documentary, you did nearly 11,000 miles, 10,875, I believe.
Yeah.
Did you happen to pass through Hamilton, Montana?
No, but I have this. Remind me where the nearest big town is to Hamilton.
Missoula.
Missoula. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was on my radar.
Okay.
But I didn't get to it. I did. You saw the other ones I did in Montana. Yeah. And now I wish I had.
Well, the great thing is that I did a little bit of research into that theater, and it's I'm not sure if it would have been helpful to your documentary because they're doing what some of the other theater owners in those small towns are doing. It's nonprofit organizations are trying to keep it alive, trying to restore it. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of a triumph, actually. It's having kind of I wouldn't say a renaissance, but it's a rebirth, surely, and they're bringing it back, and it's becoming the pride of Hamilton, Montana. They're having live shows and they're bringing back classic cinema, and I just think it's so encouraging.
That is great, and you're making me wish even more that I'd gone there. Yeah. Dang, I'm learning this. I'm hearing about other theaters, and I think like, why? How did I miss that one? I couldn't do everything, right? Yeah.
Well, you only put up 11,000 miles, surely.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah. And then my other memory, and it's a really brief, and I have so many questions for you. My other memory is a smaller town, and I ended up finding out that the Roxy Theater in Hamilton, Montana, also had a Roxy Theater in Stevensville, which is about 10 minutes away. And my dad took me to go see a movie called Victory, directed by John Huston, starring Michael Caine and a very poorly cast Sylvester Stallone and Pele. And that awakened a lifelong love of soccer. I never missed the World Cup. And so, and it's, again, memories with my father and going to these small little theaters. And I got to ask, in making this, did the ending of your film or did the tone of your film shift in a way that surprised you as you were? Yeah.
Yes, it did. I go sort of rewinding back to when I started making the film.
Yeah.
I'm from Seattle.
Okay.
That's where I went to college and where I've lived for, 30, 40 years. And we used to be a great art house town. And we've lost 10 of our art house theaters in the last 10, 15 years, all gone.
Wow.
They closed, burned down, converted to this or that. But I did grow up in a small town south of Seattle, about 30 miles south of Seattle. And we had drive-ins there, and we had 2 theaters in downtown Tacoma that I went to. My first memories were there. And they have been converted into like live stage and concert venues. Don't show movies anymore. So I had this, I've seen this erosion, right, in the Pacific Northwest. I also grew up in some of the small towns in Eastern Oregon. I lived in Vail, Oregon, and Ontario when I was really little. And I lived in Reno for a while and in Colorado Springs. And I had these memories of these places as well. And I was getting very sad seeing all of these theaters disappear. And around that time, I watched The Last Picture Show, the Peter Bogdanovich film.
Yeah.
And I sort of, all these things started to coalesce for me. And I also, as a documentary filmmaker, I like to work alone. And I like to do things where projects where I don't need a lot of gear. I can just go off and do my own thing since I edit and shoot and write. I don't need to hire a bunch of people. I was looking around for a doc to do, and everything just kind of coalesced and said, why don't I go out to these small towns in the West, the barren parts of the West, and find out if these theaters still exist. And I had intended this to be a very dark and brooding film. I was going to make it like black and white, like Last Picture Show.
Yeah.
Very sad. And I hadn't even really intended to talk to humans, when I first started. So it was going to be like an art piece. It was going to be like a visual essay that would depress everybody, which is sometimes my favorite kind of movies, right?
Sure.
But I get out there and I start meeting some of these owners and these managers who are working at these places, and they're so genuine, and they are business people, so they're trying to make a profit. But their main concern is being a gathering place for their community. So the tone of the film shifted. That's a long answer to your question. The tone of the film shifted to a more positive tone, but also there was no way I could avoid the melancholy atmosphere and the feeling. And I wanted to leave people with that feeling. It's like we are in danger of losing these spaces. And thank God there are people out there that are working to keep them alive and thriving.
Wow. Thank you so much. That is such a great answer. I suspected that the film may have started out with like a eulogy on it was very funereal in terms of its tone and elegiac. I'm sure you're hearing a lot of this.
I have been hearing it. Yeah.
Okay. And then you're right. Hope springs eternal. The poem I'm thinking of was Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." And as you're interviewing some of these business owners that are in these small towns and are hanging on and refuse to go quietly, that was inspiring. Meeting some of these salt of the earth people who just believe in their bones, in their DNA, that the movie-going experience is something we're losing and it's worth preserving. And I don't really have a question about this for you, Rustin. I just was like, you captured that. And I left your film going, we're losing.
Yeah.
But we've got some really inspiring fighters who are out there.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. The New York Times reviewed the film.
Wow.
It was the New York Times critics' pick. And the reviewer said they described the owners and managers as a feisty bunch. And that's a good way of putting it. It's like they were willing to say on camera how the studios are screwing them. But they also realized that they have to sort of make this handshake deal with the devil to stay in business. They have to show some of these box office blockbusters. They're only blockbusters, not all of them, of course. The Odyssey's different, but some of these are only blockbusters because they were released on 5,000 screens and they were a blockbuster for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so then they show them and they don't some of the theaters don't have the liberty of blowing up their schedule to show something more interesting, something below the radar, an art house film.
Right.
Or a classic movie. So some of them are beholden to this idea of having to show Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, which I'm sure you would agree is a masterpiece, right, Joseph? Yeah.
Two thumbs up all the way.
We don't even have to see it to know that it's a work of art, right? So, they are, and the theaters, like you mentioned, your theater that you remember from Hamilton, the ones that are becoming nonprofits, they're finding that could be a pathway to success because they get a buy-in from the community.
Yep.
They have to have a board of directors, and usually a board of directors is diverse enough that they all bring in their different idea of what a theater could be. Someone might say, I'm really interested in live theater. We're going to start putting on plays. Or I'm interested in getting those nationally broadcast theater, stuff from New York or wherever that you can show in theaters now.
Sure. Something from the Met or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah, I don't watch those, but you got it. The Met.
Yeah.
And others want to do live music, right? Or they want to they want to open it up to high school graduation celebrations or weddings or homecomings or whatever. And so the nonprofits bring in a lot of voices, and they create this diverse programming. Plus, it makes them eligible for grants. And then everyone knows that they're raising funds, and especially in some of these small towns where there's there's an aversion to the taxes being raised to support something as weird as the arts,
Sure.
that it makes it easier for someone to say, well, I'll donate $5,000 to this rather than have my taxes raised, whatever. But also, too, the towns, I think, where they are nonprofits, I don't know what it's like in Hamilton. You can tell me. These towns have other things going on that bring people downtown. They usually have a bookstore. They have a great cafe with really excellent coffee, and it's a gathering space, a place where people can have conversations. They usually have a good brew pub. That seems to be essential, right?
Yeah.
And there's usually some kind of ecotourism in the surrounding area. Mountain climbing, hiking, camping, rafting, whatever.
Oh yeah. Craft beer at the local watering hole. Yeah.
Yeah. And those elements all kind of come together to sort of elevate the theater too to this level of like, this is a place I want to go check out, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're not showing Shazam 2, I might go, right? Yeah. That's the whipping boy for my film. Yeah.
It's perfect though, because
the villain.
it's just perfect. I mean, just a little bit more about me. I did grad school in England. I did it in literature. And while I was in grad school in England, I worked part-time at a art house cinema. It was called Picture House Cinema. And what was interesting about it is that it was in Stratford-upon-Avon, England, which is, of course, where the Royal Shakespeare Company is. And we've had a lot of famous people come through. But we had Sir Ben Kingsley's handprints, a plaster mold of his handprints when they dedicated the cinema back in the early 90s. And they tore it down. It went the way of the dodo because of multiplex, moved into town, and there was more money to be made on a multiplex. And they tore this thing down, but we were having like Met Opera, we were having the National Theater broadcasts, we would have poetry readings, live music, and they tore it down for the multiplex.
That's brutal. And once it's gone forever. Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And we've missed something. Like I went to go see with my wife in 70 millimeter. I had to go to a special screen. It was in Dublin, California. It was an hour and a half drive, and I went and saw The Odyssey. And okay, it's a great picture and wonderful sound and great movie. But when I took my wife to go see One Love, or the Bob Marley movie at the Modesto State Theater, which is where your film's going to show, there was just the interaction with the staff and these classic seating and just the whole ambiance was so much better than one of these cold and of these multiplexes. Yet when your film was at the Washoe Theater, now I want to get on the road and go to the Washoe and see it. Mm-hmm. I was astonished at the attention to interior design, this Art Deco look.
Yeah, it's like a museum. It is. It really is. And an interesting thing about the Washoe. So this is a little bit of what I'm dealing with when I'm trying to get my film to show at the theaters that were in the film.
Yeah.
The theaters where I talk to the owners, right?
Yeah.
I have booked a few of them now, about 5 or 6 of them. They're going to show my movie in a couple weeks.
Wow.
I'm going to try to go to those screenings.
Yeah.
The Washoe, however, they are one of those theaters where they are totally locked into the studio delivery system. And the guy in the film,
poor guy.
His name is Jerry. You met him in the film.
Yeah.
And I find he's very hard to get a hold of because he doesn't do email and he doesn't respond to phone calls. So what am I supposed to do? Right. Pony Express maybe, but that lasted only a couple years anyway. And he said, "Well, I remember you interviewing me. Your film sounds great." He says, "I just don't know if I can show it because I might piss off Disney." I might piss off Disney because Disney supplies so much of their content, right?
Right.
And I was like, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, it's tough for me to break out of the schedule that Disney gives us to show another film." So,
wow.
He said, I'm going to try. That was a few weeks ago. I haven't heard from him since. But that happens all over. These theater owners who have their bread and butter is the box office, where they have to play it on a clean screen for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I've heard more stories about this now that I've been out talking about my film.
Right.
Where theater owners say, I have gotten punished. I have been on probation because I have dared to break away from my contractual obligation to show this film and only this film for 3 weeks. You're wearing a hat of A24. A24 is apparently one of the biggest villains in this story. I didn't name them in the movie, But
Okay.
they are. They are. I just got to tell you, everyone
Yeah.
says they're the worst. They have sometimes when a theater has dared to break the mold, they will say like, you're not getting another one of our films for 6 months. Tough, you know. So just learn your lesson and don't do that again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, uneasy lies the head that wears this crown. Well, that kind of puts a spin. That's
Yeah.
disappointing to hear because, wow, that's eye-opening. So they basically put you in timeout.
Yeah, they do. They put you in timeout. Right. And this isn't something I'm making up. This is theater owners. It's a story that they know. They've heard this before. And I use A24, but other theaters will do it too. I mean, you heard in the film that like Disney is they demand a lot more money.
Yep.
And if you don't make enough to break even, you owe them money, right?
Wow.
And it's you have to pay the rental regardless of whether you made enough to at least break even.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's
cutthroat.
It is cutthroat. Yeah.
Wow.
But I didn't want to focus solely on that in my film. I didn't
Right.
want this to be a treatise on the economics, of running a film theater. I'm really glad that is in there, but I still wanted to capture this feeling of the American West, which you're familiar with, where you live,
yeah.
and those true cinema deserts, those vast open spaces where you can hear the distant thunder, you can hear the train, you can hear the dog barking somewhere.
Yeah.
You can feel the wind, and I wanted to capture all of that just to kind of give people an idea of how, and this is why I showed a lot of Western clips in the movie, is like how this idea of the West is and the sort of texture of what I shot there and the sounds inform this melancholy of what we're losing when we lose these theaters, and why they're so important to preserve. And isn't it great that this one theater with its beautiful marquee framed against a western sky is still there holding its own against the bad guys, Wow. Yeah.
It's inspiring. I mean, I understand that to get some of the best images of those wonderful vintage neon signs, you obviously have to shoot at night or at dusk. But tonally, it felt like tonally, maybe the sun is going down on a lot of these cinemas. Maybe some of them are not going to make it. And as we know at the end, spoiler alert, some of them don't. And move on. I feel like the town loses something. It definitely loses an art center where people can get together and talk about art and movies and yeah.
Well, and there's I could continually update this film every 6 months, with new closures and new openings or new owners or whatever.
Right.
And I did do an update about 4 months ago, and the Sierra Theater in Susanville is an example. They had closed. In the film, I show them closing, right? But since that happened, they formed their own nonprofit when another nonprofit backed out, and they are back showing movies again. And my film is going to play there for a week, in a couple of weeks. And the other theater I was going to say is that the drive-in theater called the MF Drive-In in Milton, Freewater, Oregon.
Right.
And I have at the end of the film now that they've been in business 65 years and counting.
Yeah.
Well, right after I did that update, 65 years and counting, they announced on Facebook that they were sold after 65 years. So I thought, oh damn. And then I found out 2 weeks later that sale did not go through. So they are still in business. They are still counting. And maybe they'll decide that this is the gods talking to them, saying like, no, you're not going to quit. You got to stay in business because this is your family business, and people love you, and it won't be the same when you go away. So that but this is happening a lot. A couple other things, theaters in the film have closed that I didn't update, and this is it's recurring. You know, yeah.
Well, I mean, I have such a connection with cinema, and I have so many memories. I have a permanent scar, can't see it probably, on my forehead for when during a drive-in showing of Jason and the Argonauts, I was a little kid and I was jumping up and down on the roof of the car and I slipped and fell and cut my forehead. And I know I never got to see how the movie ended because we had to like go and get stitches. I mean, your film is so hopeful, and it's clear you're not, as you said, you're not traveling with a huge documentary crew, but you wrote the book, if I'm not mistaken, Get Close: Lean Teen Documentary Filmmaking.
Yeah.
And then it looks like, and I haven't read the book, I haven't had the pleasure of reading it, but it looks like based on what that book is, or what you put in that book, you put that into practice in the making of the Last Picture shows. Is that correct?
That's true. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's true. And that's kind of been my way of working for a long time. My wife and I have had a business. We've sort of closed it off now, where we make films that way. It's just the two of us, and I do the technical stuff, the camera, the editing, and she did the producing and the writing and the interviewing. And we made documentaries that way. And then I made a few on my own. And it's just the way I love to work. It's very economical. And I learned all these skills in my time in learning broadcast news. So I learned how to edit. I learned how to shoot. I learned how to write and produce and ask questions. I just feel very comfortable doing that. And I also feel, and I write about this in my book, which you can get through Oxford University Press or your independent bookstore.
Yeah.
I write about this idea that once you strip away all of the crew, all of the extra equipment, all of the filters and the little attachments you can put on a camera nowadays, strip that all away, you get much more honest and vulnerable interviews from your subject matter.
Yeah.
They just open up and they're more approachable. They let you get closer. And you can suggest, you've just met them and you can say, hey, can I follow you up to the projection room? Sure. Yeah, it's this way, right through the men's bathroom, past the urinal.
I remember that. That was wow.
Yeah. And so I like to work that way. It's just, it's a lot less expensive.
Yeah.
And you can call your own shots. You don't have to run everything by the crew or the producer or whatever. So yes, I applied that to this film. It was just me, my camera. I did all the interviews off a shotgun mic. I didn't even put a lavalier on people. And I just applied a voice isolation filter to take all the extra sound.
Yeah.
All the noise, the background ambiance, took that all up. I just had a tripod, no lights. And I used a little tool called a slider, which you can put on a tripod and you can get a little nice smooth camera dolly move.
Yeah.
And I edited the film myself, and I also, for the first time ever, I did the color correction myself in Final Cut Pro, and they have new tools for that.
Cool.
So this is kind of I don't want to sound too lofty, but it is kind of an auteurist work, right? I love auteurs, so I feel like kind of fits here. I'm sort of the author of this piece, and I live or die by that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's very clear. When I saw the credits roll and I saw produced by, edited by, and I saw your fingerprints are over every aspect of this film, but in a great way, because it's the purity of your vision to make this film. And there's no agenda here. It's just you're telling truth.
Yeah.
It's verisimilitude. That's a word I think they use in documentary filmmaking.
Right.
You visited 123 theaters around the American West. Is going to the movies, and I guess I include the multiplex too, is that actually dying, or is the industry, in your opinion, just going through another transformation?
Well, I believe the former initially, it is dying. And I think there's still a lot of evidence that we're not anywhere near back yet.
Okay.
But once the film was finished, and I'm starting to see more evidence now in Hollywood, and there's a lot more articles being written, a lot more podcasts and blogs and reviews being written about the demise of cinema.
Yeah.
You're seeing that box office has been really good this year. It's mainly because of a few films like The Odyssey and now Spider-Man, and the movie The Invite is doing well, and Backrooms and Obsession. I didn't see Obsession. I really wanted to, but I saw Backrooms and The Invite.
Yeah.
And more. And I think what's really interesting is that more young people are coming back to the theatrical experience.
Yeah.
And one of the great interviews that I have in the film is with Ross Melnick. He's the one expert in the film, the expert about film history. everybody else is an expert about running a theater. He's the one who's expert about film history. And he said to me off camera on a different matter, when people ask him, it's like, what's going to happen, Ross? What do you think the future of the theatrical experience is going to be? And he said, you look at Gen Z, they're gonna dictate it, and they sort of are. They're getting back to the theater, and I think that a lot of these young people are coming of age during the time of AI, where algorithms are making all their decisions. They're looking at TikTok, and they have their phone buzzing every 30 seconds. I think that they are looking for curated experiences, human curated experiences. And that means going to a theater to see what they're programming there and see what the people who know what they're talking about, what they think they should see, that they need to know about this film, even if it was made 50 years ago. I think that is really happening. Now, it's not happening as much in the small towns because you just don't have as many young people. The ones that are maybe near a university, even if it's a small university, they have more of those people. Or if it's like a vacation town,
right.
They'll get young families there, and they'll get back to the films.
Right.
But I do think that box office in the cities drives and helps success out in the small towns as well. And I am seeing, when I go to the movies now, I try to go to movie theaters at least 6 or 7 times a month. I see like 30 movies a month. A lot of those are online, Criterion. Wow. I'm sure you're a Criterion fan.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. And so I have a great little home cinema set up, but I am really committed to getting myself back into movie theaters. And it's always a good experience, even if the film isn't that good.
Yeah.
My point is, I've been seeing more trailers now. And for a while, the trailers you would go and see, it was like one apocalyptic thriller after another, right? One Marvel Cinematic Universe, superhero film, guys in tights film after another. And you're like, Jesus Christ, when is this ever going to end? Well, I'm seeing more dramas now being advertised. I was in New York and I saw the movie Tony, and the first 5 trailers were all like adult dramas. And I was encouraged by that. And some good directors like Tony Gilroy, who did one of the greatest films of the last quarter century, Michael Clayton, he's got a new film coming out. And,
really?
Yeah, it's called Behemoth. I don't even know what it's about, but it looked great.
Yeah, it's got Pedro Pascal in it, and it's
and
musicians or
Will
something.
Arnett.
Will Arnett,
is in it too. Yeah. So anyway, my whole point here is that I think there are more. I think the studios maybe are making more dramatic films for adults. And I say an adult is anybody over 14, 14-year-olds can handle films like that, even 13-year-olds.
Right.
I showed my son The Deer Hunter when he was 11, and he loved that movie, right? It didn't damage him.
Okay.
Much. But yeah.
Yeah, the roulette scene, that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but great scene though.
Well, I have kids. I have my daughter's 17. She wanted to see Obsession, so her and her mom went and saw Obsession. My son and I wanted to see Backroom. He wanted to see Backrooms. He's 21. Loved it. So it's still a family experience for us.
Yes,
and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it is encouraging to see some of this adult drama that's starting to have a resurgence. And I mean, it was really weird because on the socials, and I'm only talking because you mentioned this, it was trending that you had to see the Odyssey on 70 millimeter, or you had to see it in IMAX. By hook or crook, you just had to. And there was a hashtag that said, "as Nolan intended." So it's like, and that was kind of, in the back of my head, I'm like, amidst all the A-list talent and the hype train for Nolan, he is a very talented filmmaker, and he's just made a film from a 3,000-year-old poem. Yeah. And it's made has made more than $1.5 billion. And that gives me a little bit of hope that, like you said, the social media Generation Z, they are willing to get off their phones if you can give them a curated experience of going to the cinema and seeing movies on the big screen.
Yeah, if they're made to feel that something is special and can only be seen this way, then that's, and they're listening. They're They're listening to all this. You know, I did show my film in Houston at a benefit screening for a theater there. It was my youngest audience yet. It was like there were 75 people. It was a good audience, and I would say 65 of them were under 30. Right. Huh. And I told the person who had me down there, I said, this is the youngest audience. This is great. I'm amazed. And she said, yeah. And they're all going to go on Instagram about this film and talk about it. And I still, most of my audiences are older people. Yeah. But when I see younger people out there, they stay, they ask questions. And what I often get from them is someone comes up to me who's maybe 30, younger, and said, I was really moved by your film because I grew up in a town where the theater was long dead. I never got to go to it. I missed that whole experience, and you brought it to me what I missed, and that's great. I didn't intend that. You know, I didn't know I was going to have that effect. So that's why I would encourage young people to go see the movie. Is that it's going to bring you. It's going to bring you closer to something that you lost, and maybe you'll help preserve what we still have.
I appreciate that, because in your film, the professor you had, what was his name again?
Ross Melnick.
Ross Melnick. He did make a comment about here's what we lose if the theaters disappear completely out of small towns. These kids aren't going to grow up knowing what a big screen movie experience is, and they're less likely to want to develop an interest in it later if you don't. So we potentially lose that, and I wish the industry, like the big tentpole industries, like Disney or Marvel or whatever, I wish they grasp that, or A24 for that matter.
Yeah.
Grasp that and stop bullying some of these small town theaters.
Right. And we're hearing some rumblings that maybe Netflix isn't as evil as we thought in terms of theatrical releasing. I don't trust these corporations for more than like 2 minutes, so that we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that goes. But I'm hoping that they're getting this message that the theatrical experience is important, and they're the ones that are going to have to help preserve it. And they do that by making it an experience where people have agency, meaning that the owners and managers out there running these theaters have some agency and have some say in what they can show their audience and what they want to show their audience. Yeah.
That's very well said. Rustin, I have enjoyed this conversation with you.
Me too.
Thank you so much. I watched your film last night. I wrote my review this morning. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, as I was writing and remembering, I was nearly in tears because I was like, man, I miss my dad. And those great experiences I had were at the cinema in a small town.
Yeah.
So
I had my first great movie experiences with my dad as well. My mom and dad divorced when I was young, and my dad would always take me to movies on rainy Sundays in the Pacific Northwest, and we saw such great stuff. And I saw a lot of R-rated material before I was old enough to know. But hey, I'll never forget some of those films.
You're right.
No, do we have time for one little anecdote?
Of course. Yeah.
So when my mom and dad divorced, my mom also would take me to movies, right? Because I was like the only kid, and they had to think of something to do with me, right? Sure. And this is when I was 9. And on a Saturday, I would go see Bullet with my mom, and because she loves Steve McQueen.
Of course.
And then on Sunday, the next day, I would go see Barbarella with my dad for obvious reasons, right? And I'm 9 years old, and I'm thinking like, this is great. Steve McQueen and now Jane Fonda, I'm in heaven.
That is fantastic.
I didn't know how good I had it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. One of my earliest childhood cinema memories is going in Denver, Colorado, and standing in a line that wrapped around the cinema. I remember standing in this line and being really antsy. I think because I had to go to the bathroom, and we had to stand in this line. I'm 5 years old, I think 5. And we're seeing Star Wars in 1977.
Yep. I remember waiting in those lines too. I was how old are you?
I'm 53.
Okay, I'm 68. So I was, but I still remember that too. I was 15 years older, but I remember that day. I also remember waiting in line to see something called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and how everyone was talking about it in line. And it was like an event. It's like we couldn't wait because No one had seen anything about this movie. We just read a few things, but it was incredible. Yeah.
Well, Rustin, I have really, really enjoyed talking with you. I know I've already said that. Your film is, I mean, it dredges up. I wouldn't say dredge in a negative sense or a pejorative sense, but it certainly awakened a lot of things that I had forgotten about that were meaningful to me. And maybe that's the message of your film, is that if we don't pay attention to what's happening in our small town cinemas, we're at risk of losing them forever.
Yeah. That's absolutely right.
Wow.
We have to go back to the theaters. That's what will keep them going. Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Again, Rustin, thank you so much for your time
Thanks,
today.
Joseph. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'd love to, if I can, maybe I can email you a link to my review that I wrote.
I'd love to read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the publicity team, Danielle with Falco, they're on it. You make sure they get it too.
Oh, for sure.
Because they like to let everybody know. So yeah.
Of course. 5 out of 5 stars for me.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I loved it. And I can't, if it shows up at the Modesto State Theater, I'll be looking for it. I'll take my wife with me. We'll go see it. Because we've gone to that theater to see movies before.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that is the podcast. I think Rustin was such a fantastic guest. I was just fascinated by his perspectives. It's just so you know, I over prepare for all of my guests when they come on this podcast. I never run out of questions. I simply just run out of time. I had 30 minutes. I gave 30 minutes. But honestly, I had about an hour's worth of questions I could have asked Rustin, but his time is precious. And I think what we discussed was the most important questions I had, and his perspectives on things I think are just so fascinating. But what a great guest. I will definitely be following his career and hope, fingers crossed, that if he makes anything else, that I can have him back on the podcast. He is fantastic. Again, his name is Rustin Thompson, based out of Seattle. He is a fantastic documentarian, as I think you will know just from this interview. And I couldn't be more honored to have him on the podcast. That's all from me this week. I appreciate your time today. If you're making film and you're looking at especially documentary film, because I've had a lot of documentarians on this podcast, I recommend getting his book, Get Close, Lean Team Documentary Filmmaking, which really advocates just going for it. I mean, most of how Rustin made this documentary was just him and a partner. They just went out and filmed, just chuck a tripod on the ground and start filming. So they didn't have this enormous crew. I mean, that's kind of wild. He's an award-winning filmmaker, and he didn't go traveling these 10,000 plus miles around the American West with a whole film crew. He did it very bare bones. And I think there's something inspiring about that. If you yourself have something you're passionate about and you want to make it, don't put obstacles in your way that don't need to be there. Maybe you can pull it off without an enormous crew accompanying you. I'm reminded of my interview with Jeff Hupp last year from the Detroit area. It's called Band on the Run. And his methodology, he filmed it in 8 days. 8 days. He filmed the beginning, middle, and end of the film in 8 days. And he did it with a bare bones crew. He didn't have a lot of people with him. And so I think I'm always inspired to hear that you can pull off what some might consider as the impossible with just a limited budget or limited resources. It's still possible to create art and contribute. And I hope you at least grasp that from my interview with Rustin. Anyway, I'll see you next week. I can't wait for you to hear next week's episode. As I say this, the next week's episode, full disclosure, has already been recorded. And it's a returning guest to the podcast. And I could have had this conversation with this podcast. I could have had this conversation on that podcast, which was going to be next week's episode. I could have carried that conversation on for hours and hours and hours because it was that engaging and that fascinating. My guest is such a talented creative in the industry, and I'm glad that they came back to the podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear it. I won't spoil it, but it's coming out next week. Anyway, from me to you, have a great week. Take very good care of yourself. Eat right, get your rest, take your vitamins, So just take it easy, okay? Life is rough. Go easy. It's okay to hit the cruise control sometime with things, okay? So take it easy. I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.